Good evening and a warm welcome to Pallikkutam GlobalConnect 9. This weekly program was conceived by Rajagiri Media as a platform for experts in various areas to interact with stakeholders in education. We dealt with several interesting topics in our previous events, such as mobile addiction, gender sensitivity, innovative tools for online education, nutrition and health in times of pandemic, importance of endurance and fitness for students, and defining and assessing career aptitude in students. Those who missed it can see them on our Pallikkutam Facebook page and YouTube channel. Today's topic is STEM learning through play beyond classroom. STEM, as you all know, stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, arts has been integrated into it to make it STEAM. The progress of any nation depends on the investments made in science and technology, which has now become interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary in nature. Rather than teaching the four disciplines as separate and discrete subjects, STEM integrates them into a cohesive learning paradigm based on real-world applications. Hence, many nations worldwide are trying to bring as many students to do higher studies in this area. STEM provides the biggest opportunities for building a successful career and gainful employment. Today, we are fortunate to have Mr. Tushar A Amin with us. He is an entrepreneur, renowned author, and screenwriter, and co-founder of Smartivity, developers of tools for STEAM learning. He believes that there are inexpensive and innovative ways of playful learning that can be integrated into STEM disciplines. Without any delay, let's start the program. I request all participants to mute your audio and raise questions in the chat box or wait till the presentation is over for the question and answer session. This event is also being streamed live on Facebook. Participants may also use the comment box to raise questions. On behalf of all of you, I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Tushar A Amin and invite him to start his presentation.
So much, Nancy, hello everyone. Good evening. I believe most of you are educationist teachers here, and I'm the odd one out. I have no understanding of academic teaching, but I'm glad to connect with you all and present a perspective from my side, which is from the side of toy designers or entrepreneurs working in the same field as you, that is education. And through today's short chat, I would just like to present what we are doing and how we are doing and why we are doing, and how it can help you as teachers, as academicians, as educationists, engage kids better in a much more fun and playful learning experience. So, as Nancy introduced, I am one of the co-founders of a toy design company called Smartivity. We design educational construction toys that focus on introducing children between 6 to 14 years of age to fundamental concepts from the STEAM subjects. As Nicey shared, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. We started this organization around 6 years ago, in 2015, primarily to kind of inspire and encourage and introduce kids to something that we were really passionate about. That is science, technology, engineering, maths, STEM, and design, which is what we typically do. We design toys and then we hand them over to the kids. So the basic reason behind focusing on STEM as a field in which to create these designs in were manifold. Firstly, we ourselves, all the four co-founders at Smartivity, we are engineers by education. Our basic education is a BTech from one of the leading institutes. Secondly, we also knew, just because we had come out of the best of the colleges, we also knew what was wrong in the way that we learned in our education system. The fact that we came out of really good colleges was only a testimony to the fact that we knew how to game the system. Our education system is geared towards passing exams. And as a personal anecdote, I tell that We learned something called gear ratios. I come from Maharashtra, so in our case, it was taught in ninth standard. I excelled in my 10th standard board exam, excelled in my 12th standard board exam. But till the time I hit the machine shop in engineering first year, honestly, I had not seen a gear in operation. In the sense, I had not seen it as an engineer or as a person who would design something or would understand practical application of gear mechanisms. I knew the formulae, I knew how to solve problems, I knew how to score marks. And that is one of the reasons, core reasons why when I was looking for something to do beyond what I was doing, I thought that this needs to change. This one basic change that needs to be brought about in our overall educational system is to make all education practical experience based. Because today I have a degree in engineering, but that's that. If you throw me in a factory shop floor, I'll be at a loss as any child who is 4 or 5 year old. I will still have to figure out stuff. I'm not trained for that. And that was one of the core reasons. Another thing that we realized as we got into designing these toys was that there is a lot of encouragement coming in from institutions and authorities, government authorities, to encourage STEM learning in amongst kids. I'm sure this was way back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when no one in India actually was really aware of there's something called STEM. The whole growth in awareness of STEM has happened over the past 2.5, 3 years. But internationally, in US, in Europe, governments are spending a lot of money, giving a lot of money to schools and educational institutions to get kids to accept STEM as a career option or as a profession in the future to learn the STEAM subjects. And when we were kind of talking to all these authorities, we got to understand the reason behind this. Uh, STEM, like most of us here, would be over 30 years of age. I'm just making a very broad assumption. Forgive me, those who are younger than that. But I'm 45 today, and over the past 20 years, the world has changed so drastically. And all the changes that have happened in this world have been from the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. And no matter what I had studied as a child uh, and what preparation I would have been given, none of that would have actually ever prepared me to kind of use something like Zoom to talk to such a large audience, or to use internet or email, or to use analytic tools to kind of arrive at certain decisions. That was a different world that I came from. But over the past 6 years, our discussions with various experts from various fields have actually helped us boil down to three basic empowerment tools that we as one generation can hand over to the next generation, the generation that is in school. And these three uh, weapons or tools are one is confidence, second is creativity, and the third is scientific temper. If kids are empowered or enabled with these tools, the result is that no matter what situation that you put them into, and whatever we have seen over the past 20 years, the changes that have come in internet, mobile, uh, medicine, communication, whatever, wherever you look, the world has advanced so drastically. It's not the same as 20 years ago. This speed of change is only going to accelerate, and the innovations are only going to multiply manifold exponentially. So today's child, if you train them for a particular job, there is no guarantee that that job would exist in that when that child steps into real world. More probably or most probably that job will not exist when that child steps into real world and has to find either something to do with his life to be successful, or take up some job that is available in that particular world. So to enable a child to survive and thrive in a situation that is so dynamic and so unpredictable, we at Smartivity, based on our interaction with a lot of people, believe that the only tools that will help that child are creativity, confidence, and scientific temper. Creativity, of course, does not restrict itself to art and painting and drawing. More about ability to think of different ways to look at a different at the same problem or same situation. Confidence is to kind of take on challenges even if there is no set example or precedent to that particular challenge. And scientific temper typically translates into qualities such as abilities to observe something, analyze something, evaluate what your analysis yields, and then take a rational decision so that you solve a problem. So these, if a child today is empowered with these these three qualities, uh, the chances of that child being able to kind of create new solutions, create new innovations, and be successful in the future are guaranteed according to us and according to whoever we talk to. So that is why creativity and confidence are some things that come from culture, where you grow up, upbringing, and all. But scientific temper is one critical component which comes only through practice, and practice comes in this particular field. Can come through school, can come through doing stuff on your own, parents encouraging that particular attitude, and that is why we kind of realize that STEM is being encouraged so much. That there is a reason that kids should be trained in STEM subjects, because these qualities come in handy even if you are going to become a chef, because cooking is ultimately science, or you're going to become a painter, because even there you have to understand balance of colors and all, or you're going to become an entrepreneur or a manager, or actually a scientist or a researcher. It does not restrict itself to science, technology, engineering, arts, and engineering and math field. It is more widely applicable, scientific temper as a quality, and it helps you become successful. Uh, During that period, and as Nicey said, that STEM has evolved into STEAM recently. There was a lot of debate happening between the people who were working in STEM fields and people who were also working in the humanities field. So as I said, A in STEAM does not stand only for arts and painting and drawing. It encompasses the entire humanities as a field. The reason for inclusion of arts is very, very crucial and critical. Uh, Today, we have billionaires and millionaires coming out of STEM fields who are pursuing very, very divergent agendas that are primarily driven by either money making or fame seeking. And these are typically purely rational minded people. And the products that are coming out of this kind of line of thought are not taking into consideration basic principles of humanities, of what is the impact of this particular technology on the society, who all is going to benefit, what are the political ramifications of you opening your platform to advertisers like Facebook. And unless children have an over encompassing understanding of both how to innovate and what is the impact of how to evaluate the impact of that innovation, uh, that education is again incomplete or half. And that is why the welcome inclusion of A and the word extending from STEM to STEAM. Uh, this kind of makes sure that kids who are encouraged to take up these fields have a balance of creativity, that is humanities, and understanding of empathy and impact, and also are encouraged to innovate and create newer solutions for challenges that the society is facing, like climate change or energy crisis. There are manifold crises that today's generation, young kids, are going to face when they grow up, and they will have to be prepared for that. Now, this kind of becomes a platform where, if we actually look at it objectively, learning STEAM subjects doesn't become a career trajectory. It more or less becomes a life skill. Because tomorrow's world, the world of the future, is going to be driven by all these advances in these five fields. And that is why, for us, we kind of are passionate about STEAM, and we have kind of betted our whole life on ensuring that the next generation of kids, are capable of learning core fundamental concepts from these fields uh, in a way that is more acceptable to them, but more enjoyable to them. Uh, and that's where today's topic comes into play, which is learning beyond classroom through play. For us, as I said, the traditional learning had certain lacunae that we kind of exploited. Uh, One of the core fundamentals of today's education system, which is kind of designed to cater to industrial society, was to kind of churn out employees for established industries that placed heavy premium on passing certain exams, not understanding exactly what you're learning, but learning or rote learning enough to get through one barrier after another to kind of reach that shop floor or that office, white collar office, where you will be doing tasks that might not be related to what you learned at all. If you look around today's societies, that is not the case. In the past 5 6 years, we have evolved from organized industrial economy to a gig economy. If you ask any 16-year-old, 17-year-old today, they don't want to get into a 9 to 5 job. They don't want to be labeled as one particular type of worker. They want to pursue passions. They want to kind of be on their own independent. And that is going to grow as we evolve over the next 10, 12 years. It's going to be a different society, even in a professional field, as we grow. The past year itself has shown us that till 1.5 year ago, we were going to school, we were teaching day in, day out. Uh, Immediately, as soon as this crisis happened, COVID crisis happened, we had to learn certain really difficult tools, adapt to teaching online. There were challenges, but we were able to take them on because, again, we had the kind of confidence, creativity, and the scientific temper to select and decide how to solve this problem. So, the world of the future is going to be different, and rote learning is not going to help in that scenario. Classroom learning will have to be supplemented by ways that we ourselves have kind of taught kids life should be like. uh, when we were growing up, we did not have choices. We were told that there is certain thing you have to do, and we did that because we also encouraged not to ask questions. And then, as a reaction to this kind of upbringing, parents of my generation and the generation after me, even more, uh, have started looking at parenting in a very different way. They are no longer authorities in the house. Each parent today wants to be a friend to a child. And that has kind of also extended to the level where discipline is not the way it used to be. Discipline is more about negotiation and compromises that parent and kids make together. So today's kids demand a particular way of life. They expect a particular way of treatment, and that also extends to the way they expect learning to be coming to them. If a teacher in a classroom is not able to engage the child's mind in the way that they believe they should be, they're entitled to be engaged. uh, the child would actually open up their phone, find a game that teaches them the same thing, or not even bother about that learning. uh, find something that engages them in their mind, and that reflects in a superficial way. It kind of becomes that they are disrespecting elders, but the fact is that they have been conditioned and brought up in such a way that they feel entitled to have certain things their own way. And it is our responsibility as the elder generation to provide that, because we know that what we are doing right now is not exactly the optimum solution, the right solution. Uh, because we have scale, you cannot really mentally engage 70 kids at one time. We used to do the things the way we used to do. So One of the solutions to this conundrum, where we have a particular way of teaching and kids are expecting or feeling entitled about another way of being taught, is to kind of come to a place where all these expectations and all these rules and guidelines uh, come together into a fun and exciting experience, which is play. So, play, whether it is purely play as a group activity without any tools or any props, or play with toys, uh, has kind of over the past century been studied by a lot of researchers. And despite the preconceived bias where we as elders, mostly parents and mostly teachers, in my experience, I'm sorry if this is not the rule, play is looked down upon as whiling away time, a waste of time, and that is for teachers' perspective. Parents, it's even worse. They don't only consider it as waste of time; they also consider it as waste of money, because there they have to pay for the toys that are brought. So uh, that kind of has given play a bad name, whereas researchers have always insisted that play is the most powerful way to learn, because in this case, you're not just learning something, play also teaches you to learn how to learn. So I'll get to that in a bit. But this kind of reflects on one of the fact that everyone observes. I'm sure you will agree, most of you will agree to this thing, is that actually, when we say learning, it's usually studying that we imply in that word learning. And as far as I know, not a single child likes to study. And as far as I know, every child loves to play. Okay. So when we introduce learning through play, what happens is that whether you give them a toy or you design an activity that actually involves that particular learning, uh, there are, as human beings, biologically we are kind of attracted towards something that uh, engages physically as well as mentally. And this begins right from our age of 6 months or 8 months, where we start exploring the world around us beyond our mom. And toys or play becomes a natural motivator for curiosity and learning. And this is something that research has proven. There are papers published, and I can share certain links with you through mail once the chat is done. And that is the reason why we kind of believed that this is one area where we can actually succeed, because we are offering an alternative way to a generation that is actually demanding an alternative way of learning. Uh, in a and there are certain uh, critical areas where play or toys are way better than classroom learning. One of the most critical areas where we as a society have failed over centuries now, and where this particular thing is really critical, not just in science or STEM fields or STEAM fields, but also in life, is our reaction to failure. Uh, if you talk to any successful person after that experience of success, they will share with you that they learn the most through their failures. There's a famous anecdote that is told that when Edison finally succeeded in inventing the light bulb, he had failed 10,000 times before that, and 10,000 first time was when the light came on. And he said that I did not fail 10,000 times. I figured out 10,000 ways in which things do not work. So, with play, uh, failure becomes part of the experience, because there is no punishment for failure in play. And that kind of makes it okay for kids to fail when they learn through play. As a persistence, or what you call as a zid in Hindi, what we call it as a uh, kids also want to prove that they can do it. So if they fail, they try new ways to figure out and win or do something successfully. They experiment, they explore things, and they find out a way in which it works, knowing that if I fail, there's no punishment to this. So play kind of also encourages one quality, that is acceptance of failure and the ability to learn from failure. Uh, The third big way in which play kind of uh, has an edge over classroom learning is the involvement of emotions in play. In classroom learning, usually the only emotion is competitiveness for kids who study, or a complete lack of interest when it comes to kids who do not want to study. If you are teaching something as exciting and at the same time a little complex as science, technology, engineering, or math, the involvement of emotions help. Basically, with when you come to toys or play, there usually is either a creative play approach where kids are asked to imagine and come up with scenarios in which they play, or mission oriented approach where you have something to achieve at the end of this particular game or play time. Uh, this brings in elements of collaboration where kids talk to each other or team up with one another to kind of create a situation where they have the advantage. They have social elements of communication, of hierarchy, authority, responsibility, roles to play. All of this comes into picture when kids are playing. Classroom learning is usually a singular activity, and that kind of takes away from the emotional richness of the experience. And that is the one of the critical ways in which classroom learning through play kind of has an edge over the classroom learning. Uh, Fourth thing is where in classroom learning, there is also a huge resistance to taking risks. So usually you will see there are the teacher's pets who will always agree with the teacher, never go against the teacher. And there are those who have given up on the teacher. I'm sorry, but and they kind of just are blank and sitting. Neither side wants to take risks by getting into a discussion or questioning unless you as a teacher are encouraging that particular involvement. uh, that particular wall that is between a senior or a teacher and the kids is broken down in play, because there you are as a teacher playing, child as a child student is playing, and in the minds of most kids, the hierarchies break down where I cannot question you or you cannot question me, and we cannot have a discussion or argument around certain things. Those walls are broken down, which encourages kids to take certain risks. And those risks are taken with a calculation in mind. It's a calculated risk, it's a healthy risk, because the it's not that there is no stake. The stake is you might lose or you might not succeed in doing something that you're doing, but that risk is tolerable. So you try out different things. Uh, there are obvious benefits over a book learning in play, which is your motor skills, your cognitive skills, all those things improve because those are in greater demand when play is happening than in textbook learning is happening, classroom learning is happening. One of the key learnings from so at Smartivity, when we design toys, it's not a one-way approach. It's not the traditional approach where the older people design the toys and sell them to parents for the younger kids to play with. Our toy design process is a bit interactive in the sense we have a team of kids whom we call STEM ninjas, and these kids actually guide us from right from the concept note stage through 10 different gates that they have to open for us. Is the construction easy enough? Is the game fun enough? Are the concepts clearly understood? Is the instruction manual simple and easy enough for you to build it on your own? So there are different gates through which they guide us and they take us. They evaluate at every point. So in these interactions, what you have learned is that uh, when kids play, they also kind of are exploring their own talents. They are kind of figure out different interests and discovering new ways in which they like to do things. So there is no one set way of doing things in play, and that's why it gives the child freedom to kind of explore newer interests, discover new passions, find out career options if they want, if they're older enough. That also opens up with opening up classrooms or learning to play. And beyond that, the most important uh, difference is something that I started out with. Play is purely based on practical application. No matter how good you are at theoretical understanding of a particular concept, if you don't know how to apply that in practical game or practical play, it is of no use, which is the same scenario as real life. No matter how good you are at understanding concepts in a book, if you can't find application for it, you will not be able to build on it. It's a good intellectual exercise for me to know what Shiva Sutras are or what Christianity was. But for me to actually benefit from the learnings of these religions as an old person, I need to have a practical experience, apply them in my life. And that exactly applies to kids who are learning core concepts that are going to build their own future. So these are the reasons why we believe that introducing play beyond classroom learning benefits kids and also kind of helps kids understand STEM concepts, STEAM concepts in a way that they can apply in real life. At Smartivity, the toys we design them based on four philosophies, as we call it. And I'll just take 7 minutes about so that I can have your reaction to what I have said in the discussion that we have. Uh, so these four pillars are one, we believe that play is the most powerful way in which kids learn. And I actually spent the last half an hour boring you guys with why that is our belief. But one more advantage or two more advantages of this that I have kept for this particular point of time is with play, learning through play also ensures that the understanding is deeper and the retention is longer because purely because the involvement is higher, the emotional, physical, mental involvement of a child is higher in that learning process. The second philosophy that we build our toys around is the promise of steam, wherein, as I said, tomorrow's world is going to be unpredictable, but it is going to be definitely driven by STEAM fields, advances in STEAM fields. And if you have thorough grounding in fundamentals of STEAM concepts, your child will be prepared to adapt, be confident, creative, and uh, have the scientific temper to adapt to that particular scenario. The third pillar is what we call the pride of making. And this is where we differ, our toys differ from most of the toys that you will see. In our case, when you think of STEAM, I'm really 100% sure that uh, what comes to your mind is electronics kits, robotics, computer labs. We don't do any of those things at Smartivity. Our toys are purely analog toys. These are construction toys like Lego. Only difference is we actually involve multiple concepts from STEAM in each toy. Lego does not do that. We make our toys from wood, so we are eco-friendly. We do not use plastic. And of course, we are almost one-fifth the price of Lego, so we are very affordable and accessible as a toy option. Because we deliver learning, we deliver at least 1 hour of engagement in construction with every toy. We introduce 5 to 6 concepts in every toy, and we do it at a much accessible pricing than international brands or Lego. The third, so the pride of making is basically we do not sell ready-made toys. Whatever we design are construction toys. So children have to actually make those toys. And what we want to do through our toys is also introduce kids to the concept of dignity of labor, because in our society, typically making is usually considered to be someone else's job. And we want to kind of introduce respect for making stuff in kids, because when a child makes their own toy, they start respecting their work, they feel responsible for it, and they show ownership for the toy. So they take care of the toy. They make sure that it is kept properly. It's not, they don't break it. And also they start getting the habit of making things. So with they start out in our case with a toy that is say 40 parts put together. They graduate to 100, they graduate to 700. But by the time the 700 bit toy is built by them, they're confident enough that they can make anything in their life. So they will not depend on anyone else. Which brings us to the fourth uh, philosophy, which is the potential of every child to be a future maker. We believe that every child can contribute positively to the society in the future by coming up with innovation, by coming up with solutions to challenges that we are facing. Only if they are given the right encouragement, right direction, right tools to build upon. And our toys are one of the tools. And we believe that in the future, there'll be two kinds of people. Most of the kids who grow up to today would either would end up becoming something that is called consumers. So consumers basically work hard at some dead end job. They earn a lot of money and then they spend that money on paying someone who's kind of solving problems in the world. And there's the other kind of kids that we want to encourage, the future makers, who come up with unusual solutions, innovative solutions to problems that are around them. And they have the confidence to kind of provide these solutions to people who are passively consuming things. And we want every child to become a maker in the future, find solutions for the challenges that are around. So these are the four philosophies: the power of play, the promise of STEAM, the pride of making, and the potential of every child to be a future maker. Uh, so with this philosophy and this understanding of the importance of play, uh, we have designed a range of around 40 toys, STEAM educational construction toys. Each involves around 5 to 6 different scientific concepts that actually enable real life action toys that the child has to play and kind of engage with either alone or with their friends to perform certain tasks or win certain games. And today we are getting recognition from across the world. We are sending our toys to over 30 different countries. Our biggest markets today are, apart from India, North America, United States and Canada, Europe. We are the only Indian toy design and manufacturing company that sends toy to China. And we were recently recognized as among the best toys in the world by magazines like Time Magazine in the USA, Newsweek Magazine in the USA. And we believe that we are doing something right by introducing play as one of the way to learn STEAM fundamentals. And I would like to kind of now open, if you have any questions, answer those questions, and also hear your thoughts on this proposition that play can be one of the ways to learn STEAM fundamentals.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tushar A Amin. Now let's move on to the interactive session. Yeah, here we have one question here.
Yeah.
How to balance between fun and learning in a game-based environment?
Okay, there is a smart ass answer to this, and there is a serious answer to this. I'll give the smart ass answer first. The moment child is only having fun and does not even realize they're learning is the balance point. Okay, and we try to do that very covertly. But when we are actually designing and conceptualizing, and the kids are evaluating what we design, uh, we actually have a really serious questionnaire where so as a teacher, if you are designing a particular activity, I would really recommend having a core group of focus group of students, where select 5 or 6 different learning ability students. So don't just select the most smartest kids, but we actually select the most naughtiest kids in our STEAM Ninja program. uh, Test this activity or this toy with 3 different levels of learning abilities, not intellect, not physical agility, learning abilities, which is a combination of all these factors, where you sit them together test that activity with them and take feedback from each one of them as to what is fun, because the definition of fun changes from one child to another. And in fun, you have to cater to the lowest common denominator. That is the expectation of a child who is expecting the most fun. Because if that child is not happy with it, 90% of the kids will be his level. The smart kid who is really talking to you about all the concept he understood and asking you questions about what more will be very few. So the activity or the selection you make of the toy or play experience will not apply to the actual mass students. So that balance comes only through testing and kids telling you. Actually, as in I'm as all of you are teachers and educationists, uh, one of the core requests I would have is involve kids in your evaluation, your own evaluation. They are brutal. They don't mince words, but it really helps to understand what they would accept. I hope I
Yeah,
was
thank
able
you.
to
Yeah,
understand.
thank you. We have Zarina ma'am has raised her hand. Ma'am, can you ask question now?
Yeah. Good evening. Hello.
Yeah, hi ma'am. Hi Zarina ma'am. Tushar.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, you
Am
are
I?
audible. You are audible.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Tushar, and good evening, Nicey. So happy to see you all.
Good
I'm on
evening,
the way
ma'am.
back. So I thought I should be attending your program. You really come up with very good programs. So I was listening to Mr. Tushar all um, my way back from college. And there are two, three things which I really wanted to ask Mr. Tushar. One is, we always talk about, the success stories, and we
Right.
ask our children to follow the success stories. Why not we advise our students to look at the failures and improve? Where did people fail, right? Where did
Absolutely.
people fail? We should try to find out where they have gone wrong in order to improve. So the failure stories also can be highlighted. Why only the stories of the successful people? This is one question which I wanted to ask, and the other is, I feel that there is something lacking in we teachers, because more and more students are, buying the products such as the Byju's app, all those things they are buying. What is lacking in we teachers, that we are not able to convey the message what the so-called apps of Baiju and others are there. Why there is something lacking in us. So we need to improvise on our teaching structure. The playwave methodology, which you were saying, yes, definitely it helps out. There's a, they can be, I mean, a lot can be done through playwave methodology. But
Right.
are we teachers so sincere enough? Because I'm into the education sector for more than 30 years.
Mhm.
Are we teachers so impartial that we don't treat all students alike? We don't treat everyone alike. In case if a student is vocal,
Mhm.
if a student raises his or her voice against the teacher, then that is the end of the student. He gets the lowest of the grades, and these things happen. I'm telling you, out of experience, what I am seeing. So that is the reason, I am like for the students, by the students, and with the students. This is what I believe. We always believe in faculty development program. In
Absolutely.
spite of having n faculty development programs, do you think our teachers are really fulfilling the requirement of a teacher? Right? One thing. And why not student development programs?
Right.
Why don't we come up with student development programs where the students are encouraged to exhibit their creativity, their innovative ideas, or whatsoever? In the
Right.
end, I'll give you an example of my own college. Like, it's not exactly, I should tell my college, engineering college only. Students did everything. Everything was done by the students, and the credit goes to the teacher. I have come across such a case. wherein I have seen from scratch till the project was made, everything was done by the teacher and the students. I mean, by the students, and the teacher was not. Teachers took the credit.
Right,
So
right.
we justifying as teachers. So these are few concerns, which I feel as an educationist, as a teacher with 30 years of experience, that we have to improvise and bring change. We should
Absolutely.
bring change. So if you can highlight on these points,
Sure,
that
sure, sure.
thank you.
First and foremost, please, teachers, do not beat up yourselves over any of the issues. Uh, there is utmost respect for teaching as a profession in our society. At least we at least are not in the West, where it's a very different attitude altogether. But talking about one, social structures are changing, and that is the reason why we have this conflict about, say, I'll just, Zarina ma'am has said that a project was executed by kids, by students. The credit went to teachers. Okay. Uh, Around 1200 years ago, uh, today we celebrate certain philosophers, certain artists. We say Michelangelo, we say Raphael, we say Aristotle. Uh, in whatever we think Aristotle said, or Michelangelo painted, or Raphael painted, all the work was actually done by the students, and it is kind of uh, assumed to be a school of thought. That particular teacher is representative of all the hundreds and thousands of students who did that work. In that era, in that society, that was the norm. Till we were learning in school or college, uh, teacher taking credit for what we were doing, or teacher actually considering that, okay, let's have shared credit. When it comes to engineering, these are research papers, there are patents, all of those things come into play. Credit and name becomes important. So that kind of was collaborative. Now today, students will actually legally sue that particular teacher if they have even one email showing that they have contributed to the project, saying you share your credit, because we have changed the way individuality is defined through our social conditioning. So today, a child has their own room in which a parent has to ask whether they can enter or not. We used to sleep wherever our parents told us to. So those things are changing because our way in which we identify ourselves is changing, and these conflicts will be temporary over the next 4 5 years. Everyone listen, but I think more importantly, one of the key reasons why these conflicts happen and where teachers are kind of finding themselves in a difficult spot is, and honestly, this is not just for this platform, I believe, uh, teachers need to be shown respect, both in terms of just social respect as well as professional monetary respect. uh, you cannot dump a teacher with administrative work, which is happening today. A teacher has to not just take classes, but also do thousand other things that actually run the school, and that strains put strains on them. They don't have time to actually look at an individual student unless that student is really uh, a teacher's pet, basically an ass licker, I was going to say. But yeah, other than that, or someone important's child, teacher will not actually have the time. So teachers are overburdened, which is a fact, which lets, and there is so much competition in the field that it leads them to take certain decisions that might advance their chance of earning those 1,000 2,000 rupees more a month. So that teacher is not trying to steal credit from the child. He's just trying to, or she's just trying to advance himself or herself in the career by taking that credit. But if respect was shown, if there was a recognition of, okay, this thesis is submitted by this but guided by this person, both are given equal respect, and that teacher is accepted for that, it might not happen. Don't be as a business owner who kind of is competing with Byju's as well. uh, I really believe it is not a child who is choosing Byju's. It is a parent who is choosing Byju's. It is not because Byju is offering any educational value. It is more because every other parent, uska bachcha kar raha hai, that parent has gotten it, and I have to, a peer pressure kind of thing. Otherwise, my child will be left behind. If you study the uh, usability, or active users on those platforms, kids log in for first 7 days. After that, they give up on that platform. So they are no better. Actually, they are way worse than classroom teachers, teachers who take real efforts to teach individually. And as regards what you said about failure, uh, it's both, as there's no fault of students or younger ones in that. It's parents, grandparents, teachers. Everyone has to consciously make that effort to make sure that failure doesn't become a stigma. Failure actually makes you find out another way. And for that, there are certain platforms like this generation actually celebrates failure. So on Instagram or on Facebook, you will see kids actually sharing that they have failed. Just like body positiveness is a trend, celebrating failure is also a trend. Maybe, and there are email subscription platforms and YouTube channels that actually interview failures only, because there's so much to learn from failures. How not to do things is the biggest thing that you can learn, rather than one way in which things succeed. So that will also change, but I think each one of us will have to take effort to kind of bring focus as much on failure as success, because trying is the hardest thing, not trying is the easiest thing. Success and failure are variables, and a lot of things decide whether you succeed or fail. So yeah, I agree with you on all counts. I only want to tell you that there should be utmost respect for teachers, whether it is through play or classroom. No one can replace a teacher. No AI, no app is ever going to kind of change that bit. The take away that importance of teacher.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tushar. I think all the questions were very beautifully answered, and I'm satisfied.
Thank you
I
so
mean,
much.
your answers met my expectations. Thank
Thanks.
you so much.
Thank
Yes, and I agree with you that no one can replace a teacher. No app can replace a teacher.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Naisi.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Tushar, for answering it. We have one more question here. How would you provide joy of making and creativity at the same time?
Uh, so again, I'll just firstly again give a disclaimer that creativity has multiple dimensions. It is not about just creating something. So in our case, I understand the question stems from the fact that the making part itself is more mechanical and technical, and how to bring creativity into it. So what happens is that when you try to make something, uh, things go wrong. Most of the times, 90% of the times, things go wrong. And when things go wrong is where creativity peaks. Because when things go wrong, you start trying to find a new way of doing things. And that is what we mean by creativity, not again art, paintbrush, colors kind of thing. But if this road is a dead end, how do I backtrack and where do I find a way from? Is where creativity comes into play. So that's where the joy of creativity and making comes together. You cannot separate the two. I'm just kind of breaking down the process, but it happens spontaneously and in a continuum, because your mind is at the same time making and finding a way to kind of avoid failures, or when met with a failure, finding a new way to solve that situation that you are in. So that's how make the joy of making and joy of creativity comes together. And beyond that also, in case of our toys, what happens is the making happens, making is actual construction is not uh, a hardcore creative process, because we give an instruction manual. So it's not like you figure out how to make it. There are steps given to you. Uh, in our case, the creativity comes into play after it's being made, because there those creative brains kind of are triggered, where you try to figure out, okay, I built this. There is this particular gear wheel. There is this particular gear wheel. It connects like this, but this is how circular motion gets translated into linear motion because of this particular ratchet and pinion mechanism that is there. This particular wheel is rotating, this particular long thing is moving sideways, and linear motion is happening. Uh, how can I now win this game by using my understanding of this particular mechanism? is how creativity comes into play. For example, and I'll give a simple example. We have a toy called Attack Chess. Okay, this is like a board game on which you put pawns on two sides, and both sides have a catapult. So you can either advance your pawns or you can knock off your enemy's opponent's pawns with using the catapult and a marble. Now that catapult has three different slots in which you can put the marble, and the trajectory is decided by where you put that marble so that it reaches a farther distance at a slower speed, or it reaches a shorter distance at a faster speed. Now, once you understand that catapult works this way, it's a very mechanical thing that you stress something and you release it, it moves. But figuring out the speed and the trajectory is where creativity comes into play, because you're in your head, you're anticipating something and then seeing it happen in real life. So that's how creativity comes into play. I hope I got your question and I answered in a way that was satisfactory.
Thank you. We have one more question here. Can you please give an example? Say how you teach a concept in physics using the toys.
Yeah, sure. So all our toys use concept in physics and engineering and mechanics typically to explain multiple concepts in one toy. I'll give you an example of something as simple as we have a toy called hydraulic crane, which is one of our best sellers. So and it is targeting kids that are 8 year old and above. The complexity is what defines the age group, not the concept. So our belief is that once a child plays with a concept, they'll be better able to understand it whenever they encounter it in their academic life. So we are taught hydraulics in 8, 9 standard, but a 8 year old who is in third, fourth standard can build this and play with it. So in hydraulics crane, there are three syringes that use Bernoulli's principle to transfer pressure. So you fill these syringes with water, and the surface area of the syringe pusher, the plunger, is greater than the surface area of the syringe ka outlet, which is why the pressure is translated into force, which moves certain parts when the water reaches a particular movable part. So in this case, you can manipulate water, the hydraulic pressure, use hydraulic pressure to move the syringe across two axes, which is up, down, and sideways. And you can also use it to clasp objects. So you can open and close the jaws of the crane using the syringe. So here we are taking a complex concept like hydraulic pressure systems, multiple hydraulic pressure systems, and all the child is doing is no definition, no formula, no square of area into force applied translates into square of area into force applied, Bernoulli's principle. It is pure press the syringe, see the action happen. All the formula definition will come in classroom when you are studying it, but here you have actually seen it happening. So that is how we can teach a concept. If as a teacher you bring this to your classroom of 8th standard student and show them this happening, you might not need any diagram or anything because they would understand it immediately that this is what is happening. So that's how concepts can be explained through play, where the objective is to lift an object, a thing that is the crane is going to lift using hydraulic pressure. And once you succeed, physics is understood.
There's one more question here.
Yeah.
Do you think current science pedagogy in schools requires change to include play elements and games?
See, I really understand since I've been kind of trying to see how our toys fit into a school ecosystem. I understand the complexities of how a school works a little bit, not as good as any of you do. But the moment you get into a school lab scenario, the budgets come into play, the administration approvals come into play, the trust members' permissions come into play, the government grants come into play. It's a bureaucratic process. Secondly, uh, the responsibility of maintaining and managing those toys come into play, which is again, as a teacher, you already burdened with a lot of things. Uh, so it's a really good idea. I would love it if all my toys were used in all the schools across the country, across the world. But at the same time, I think when it comes to schools, uh, rather than formal lab setups, which usually means either some grant has come in or someone has some influence somewhere. Uh, I would rather that as a teacher, each teacher, if they actually take the initiative to involve kids in a group activity that is play based and thinks of innovative things, and at the same time, as teachers community, you start sharing these innovative activities with each other and bring in that whole feel of community into classroom. That's a much more doable or immediately actionable approach to bring in play rather than setting up labs, because that's a long process and it can be kind of passed on to someone else. The responsibility is huge on one person for such a thing. But if you think that can be done easily, please write to me. I would love to kind of do an experiment pilot setup in your school and set up for you.
Thank you. There's another question here. Can the lab in schools be used to develop STEM tools so students can become makers?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of teachers actually on their own try to do this, encourage kids to make things. Today, actually, there are so many different tools that can actually exponentially open up the world of a child. For example, simple example, again, there is a really cheap 3D printer for around 20,000 rupees that can be installed in your school lab, and there are free softwares and free files available that you can just download from internet to actually print out different objects that your students can use in learning, or there are free 3D software that your students can use to design their own solutions for their own problems. So yeah, absolutely. I think the lab is the first place where makers movement will start in school, where kids will be encouraged to make them, and teachers like you would be the ambassadors for such a movement to happen in this country.
Thank you. There's one more question here.
Yeah.
Is it possible to involve students to develop new toys and take it to market, which may help identify innovators?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently working on a plan or a initiative where uh, we are inviting kids to partner with us in designing toys, and the process is something that we are in the process of, like, in trying to roll out, because it will be a little complex process. We are kind of looking at two or three different aspects of it. One is, the easiest thing is to kind of announce a contest, get a design, and make the toy. But as a business, there are certain things that we are obliged to kind of follow. Like, if your student designs that toy, we would like to recognize that IP as a shared IP between the child and our company. We would like to compensate that child. We would like to promote that this child has done this. Make sure that legal rights are protected, his parents' permissions are there. So all those things we are setting up, but very shortly, we will be announcing a toy design contest with kids, because we don't think anyone understands play better than children do, and they are crazy, the ideas they come up with. So it's something that we're working on. But yeah, thank you. That's a really awesome suggestion.
Thank you. There was this question, Tushar, before you had already answered it, about teaching concept in physics using the toys.
Right, right.
So there's a compliment. There's another question added to it. Is it then not an experiment? Where does play come in?
Yeah, sure. So as I was telling you about the hydraulic crane, the experiment is already happening in schools today. Your labs are doing the experiment. What play brings in is the element of collaboration and the social angle. So when I told you the example of hydraulic crane, at the end of it, there is a game that you have to play. You have to take a particular object, use that hydraulic pressure crane to carry that object across that particular distance or one place to another. So when that element is put in, uh, it becomes play. If you're just pushing a syringe and observing, that is an experiment. Seeing that it's coming out faster, the other end the water is coming out faster is an experiment. But when you use that to a practical application to either carry out one task or achieve a particular mission, that has an element of, so game design itself is a big field, but there are certain milestones that you have to put in. There are certain payoffs you have to put in, that okay, if you do this way, this is the incentive that you will get, or these are the hurdles in your path. So what we do is, like in the case of hydraulic crane, you can actually, uh, we teach not just hydraulic crane, the gear mechanism comes into play, friction also comes into play. So you have to experiment with different types of surfaces that are stuck to the jaw. So there is a jaw like this, which closes like this, and the object has to be held between these two jaws. So depending on what surface, is it smooth, is it rough, the hold or the grasp is stronger or weaker. And depending on the object that is there, its own friction coefficient, how long it will be held is decided. So then it becomes play, where you have an object and a mission to do, and that is something that needs to be brought into experiment. And any experiment can become a game the moment you have put in that bit into uh, place for students. So
Thank you.
beyond
Thank you.
just sorry, so just beyond just writing down observations and conclusions, uh, this extends it to what happens if you do this. So what you change the friction coefficient, what will happen? So that becomes an exploratory play for the child.
Thank you. Thank you, Tushar, for that. Do we have any more questions? Educating students in STEM subjects prepares students for life, regardless of the profession they've choose to follow. Technology innovator and president of Entera Solutions, Stephen F. DeAngelis, says this in an article in Wired. These subjects teach students how to think critically and how to solve problems. These are skills that can be used throughout life to help them get through tough times and take advantage of opportunities whenever they appear. We are grateful to Mr. Tushar A. Amin for the insights that he has shared. I thank all the participants for being with us. Thank you all and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me. I hope I did not bore you. And if you need to reach me, I can be reached on tushar@smartivity.in. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you, Nicey. Thank you, Raghavan sir. It was an honor to be here. Thanks.